Hi, welcome to Coach's Corner. I'm John Serruto, and my special guest is Brian Chapman, the outstanding head baseball coach of the Millburn Millers. Let's meet Brian now. Coach Chapman, welcome.
Thanks, John. Thanks for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
Brian, 10 years that went very quickly as the head baseball coach in Millburn. You've had so much success. 2 state championships on the Group 4 level, 5 sectional championships. It didn't happen overnight. How did you get involved in teaching and coaching? What's the path of a young Brian Chapman?
Well, like a lot of kids my age, I grew up loving sports. And as much as my mom tried to tell me that sports wasn't the end all for me and that I wasn't going to the major leagues. And once I actually kind of realized that, coaching seemed like a natural kind of transition for me. So I always liked coaching. Even at a young age, I remember coaching basketball teams of my girlfriend's little brothers when I was in high school still. And once I got done with college, I tried the business route a little bit, didn't really love it, and ended up back in education and teaching.
Well, you found your passion in education and teaching, and you've been in a number of different systems. Prior to Millburn, you were in Cranford. Tell us a little bit about that experience.
It was a wonderful experience. It's where I started teaching and coaching under the legendary, I guess you would say, Dennis McCaffrey, who it's funny to call him a legend because we're the same age, but he's just accomplished so much in coaching. And he's taught a lot of us the way, and I owe a lot of what I have here at Millburn and what we've been able to develop at Millburn to him and what I learned under him in Cranford.
How many years were you in Cranford, Brian?
It's a great question. It's about 10, I think, 10 or 11, and they were great years. I was a varsity assistant. We started in 1999 and coached through 10. So is that 11 years or 12 years?
You're right there.
Yeah.
Other sports besides baseball?
I did. I coached the girls' basketball team in Cranford for a number of years. That was a lot of fun, something different. I had never coached girls. I haven't really since either, but that was a fun chapter in my life too. I enjoyed doing that.
All right, so all of a sudden, a job opens up looking for a head baseball coach. You apply for that. What made you think it was time for that?
Another great question. Throughout my time in Cranford, Coach McCaffrey had always treated me as a co-head coach. So I was in no rush to go anywhere. I really enjoyed what I was doing. I felt like he made me to feel like I was a very important piece of the puzzle. So I really wasn't someone who was checking head jobs every summer or anything like that. He and I, though, would talk often. I had a list of 4 or 5 towns in the entire state of New Jersey that if the job opened, I was going to explore. And Millburn High School was on that list. So when it came open after the 2008 season, I threw my hat into the ring.
Okay, but there's a little story behind that. You came through the interviewing process. You didn't get the job the first time through. What was that like? And did it affect you in a way that gave you more determination, or did it affect your confidence in a negative way?
This could be revisionist history, but I don't remember being terribly upset. You know, I was in a good spot in Cranford. I loved coaching there. My family was there. My friends were there. I knew all the kids, of course, that I was coaching. I knew we had a good team coming back. I'm sure there was a small amount of disappointment that I didn't get it, but I understood. I was even told by the athletic director, Dr. Ted DeLessio at the time, that they were hiring from within, and that in his mind, not to take anything away from Darryl Palmieri, who had gotten the job, but he said, you know, Brian, you did a very good job and you're a strong candidate, but we're going to hire somebody who's working in the district already. So I totally understood that, and I wished Darryl well, and I wished Ted well, and I went back to Cranford, and we ended up winning a state championship within a year. So, you know, everything happens for a reason. You know, I have no regrets about not getting it at that time.
Okay, but you persevere through, and you were so impressive during the interviewing process when they did hire from within that they reached out and brought you and offered you an opportunity to interview again. You came in, you received the position, you're a teacher in the system. You've turned out so many wonderful teams, but really you've turned those teams into a great program. What's the difference between a community, a school that has great teams, or a great program?
It's the community is the difference. And that's why I think Millburn was on my very short list of places I wanted to go to, even though I was in one, a great baseball community in Cranford. You can't have as you say, a program, a successful program that is sustained over time without a great Little League, without an administration who cares about athletics, without people in the town that are passionate about the sport that you're talking about, in this case, baseball. I'm just the recipient of a lot of other people's hard work. I say that all the time, and people say, "Oh, you're just being humble," but it's the reality. I have friends even now who go to places who work really hard and do a lot of the same things we're doing at Millburn, and they don't have that type of success because the foundation isn't there. I knew from reading the Star Ledger as a 20-year-old that Millburn Short Hills youth baseball was cranking out successful players and teams since I was a child. That's the type of foundation that I was looking for, something that was in place and that I could just then get. I knew, you're going to get the consistent talent and people that care about baseball, people that are passionate, and I wanted to be able to try to see if I could take that to the next level.
Which you did. You fit in perfectly, and you're still the leader of that program. What qualities do you feel that you possess that make your leadership successful?
Well, I think you'd have to ask someone else about those qualities, if specific qualities that I might have. I just think I'm a regular guy. I get up out of bed every day and just try to do the best I can. That's something that was instilled in me by my father. He was just an ordinary guy, but he was an ordinary guy, and he was consistent every day. He just, and I really believe in that as a model for success.
Consistency.
Just get up every day and do your best, and then go to bed and then do it again. And
Brian, but are there leaders that you've been exposed to in your life that maybe in one way or another you've kind of inherited or adopted some of those qualities?
Sure. There's so many people in my life that have had an unbelievable influence, and I mentioned one there, my father. When he passed in 2015, in the eulogy I read and wrote, I compared him to Derek Jeter. For the same reasons I just said. Derek Jeter, if you looked at him as a ball player on a daily basis, probably didn't overwhelm you. But when you look at the 20-year package, it's incredible and amazing. And that's kind of how I patterned my life, was to just try to be solid every day. And when we look back and we add everything up, hopefully it's a pretty good resume.
Well, I know you've mentioned different names over the years in just conversation, and briefly, you had talked about somebody who really left this earth way too quickly, and Mike Murray. What did Mike Murray mean to you and the influence he had on you?
Yes, well, Mike Murray, I refer to him as a second father, and when I say that, I don't mean any disrespect to my own. And I've often shared that with my dad when he was alive, that I wasn't trying to put him down in any way. Mike Murray was just a guy who was, a little bit older than me. He was a coach, and he took an unbelievable interest in my life at that time. I was like a lot of 17, 18, not even 16 when I met him, 16, 17-year-olds. I was a little bit lost. I needed some guidance. I needed some motivation. And Mike was the first guy to really do that for me, to look at me and maybe see potential. And just, he gave me everything he had. He taught me, again, some really important lessons, And I always say, when he passed, I actually wrote a eulogy for him as well. And a lot of it was centered on similar things to my dad. It was, just kind of being a good person all the time, and trying to help and looking out for others, and being a good father or a son or whatever that may be, starting with those small little components. And if you can do those kinds of things every day, I tell our kids at Millburn all the time about being excellent. There's a quote that I strongly believe in. It's hanging in my classroom, that excellence is a habit, basically. It's not something you're just born with. And I tell our kids, listen, if you want to be excellent, just wake up today, Friday, and be excellent, and then go to sleep and then wake up tomorrow and be excellent. And if you can string, 2 weeks together and 3 weeks together and then months together, then at some point you're excellent.
There's your habit.
It's just how it goes.
Now you've got the real habit. Brian, I know you played at Kean University and, of course, on the high school level. And, everyone talks about the game and how the game has changed. But has the game changed that much? On the high school level, what's the biggest difference that you see now versus maybe when you played and when you started to coach?
I do believe it has changed quite a bit, actually. And I think that it's been a difficult transition for a lot of coaches and older people in the game, my age and older, let's say. The kids today are more talented, more athletic, more prepared. They are being taught the game better, the skills of the game. They all have pitching coaches, they all have hitting coaches. There's analytics, there's ways to measure, right? The way we measured our success at 13 or 14 years old was, batting average. What was your batting average in your Little League experience or your Babe Ruth League experience? Well, now they have exit velocity and launch angle and so many, and for pitching, obviously the velocity is something that is just easily attained by these kids. You have pocket radars everywhere. The data is driving these kids to be better physical players than we were. The problem with that is that I'm not sure that they're being taught the nuance of the game as well as they were when you were coaching Millburn Short Hills Little League or when I was, playing Little League. We understood more. Maybe people use the term baseball IQ. I think baseball IQ is at an all-time low right now. And when you look around the child's development, right? If you look at his development as a path, no one on that path seems to feel that they're responsible for teaching the baseball IQ anymore. The poor Little League guys are trying to do it, but the best players are leaving for clubs at such a young age that they're not getting exposed to it. The club guys make no bones about the fact that their job is to expose these kids, to put them in situations where they're observed. And then the only one left is the high school coach. So, you've asked me when we were having lunch casually just about how I see my role in development, right? We talked a little bit about development. I find that the most important thing I can provide these kids are some of the things that they never even would think of taking an extra base on a ball in the gap, understanding that the outfielder is now moving away from where he would make his next throw, base running, team defense. These are areas that people are by and large are ignoring in these kids' development now, and we spend an awful lot of time. I would say 75% of our time at practice is on those things. No one has an infield coach. I shouldn't say an infield coach. They do. They have individual infield coaches. No one has a team defense coach, and no one has a base running coach. So that's kind of the gaps as I see it.
And that's why a lot of teams beat themselves nowadays, and you don't learn that with one-on-one instruction. Brian, for those people out there that want to see their kids advance through the high school level and possibly go to the college level, is there an opportunity for everybody to play? Are there certain people that maybe should be stepping aside at that point? Are there different levels? And how do you get to those levels?
It's another great question because, one thing I've learned in my long coaching career, especially with the game of baseball, is that, and I say this to parents all the time, it's impossible and it's pointless to look at a kid at 13 or 14, which is when now these people start to think about, is my son going to play in college? It's pointless to look at them then and make a determination based on what they are. There's so many factors that go into his ability in those next 4 years to become a player who could play in college. Growth, how much time he's going to put in, all kinds of development, learning, things like that. I've seen kids that as freshmen you would think no way they would play in college, and then by the time they're 17 or 18 years old, they're Division I players. I have so many stories of kids that you think are going to make it. There's the kid who grew quickly and he's dominating at 12, 13, 14, and then he levels off and doesn't end up playing in college. And the opposite holds true always too. So that's the one message I would say to parents now, and I do to our Millburn parents. Look, just do every day, control the controllables, do great in school, be a good person, keep working on your craft, and let's see where it plays out.
Let it unfold.
Yes,
Let it unfold.
and at the same time, again, not to go off on a tangent here, but you hit a you hit a nerve a little bit. Is that one of the problems? And I try to address this in our town. Is that everybody's always looking to the next thing these days? I play high school so I could play in college. I play college so I could play pro. I play pro so I could go to the Hall of Fame. Well, I think that we're speeding up these kids' lives a little bit too much. We're dropping recruiting into like 9th and 10th grade now instead of 11th and 12th grade for college. I mean, I think that it's important to be where your feet are. And I try to say this to not only our players, but to their parents. It's okay to really care about like Millburn High School, being a really good player at Millburn High School. You're still going to get to your ultimate goal if your goal is to play in college, but enjoy the experience you're having. Like I think in so many ways now, we're robbing these kids of childhood, like things, trying to run them around to club teams and flying them all over the country, when sometimes it's just you want to put your town on the front of your jersey and play with your buddies and experience that.
Coach, great advice. Enjoy the moment, enjoy the time. We don't know what tomorrow's going to bring. Let it come on its own. Speaking of Millburn, now you've turned out these great teams. Not every team's a state championship team. Now, you've won 5 sectionals, very difficult to do in your section. 2 all-group teams, outstanding players. And a lot of them went on to play college and some did not. You were talking about relationships before. Do you still stay in touch with a lot of those players?
Of course. I've been texting with many of them this morning already. That is the thing, John, is getting into teaching and coaching both. The best part of that is the relationships, and that's something that I take a lot of pride in. You mentioned all the kids, the Evie Rui Bulls and the Richie Sheikoffers, who were all state players, and whether I was their coach or my wife was their coach, they were going to go and be successful at the next level. The better stories sometimes for me are when I hear that a player of mine who went to a big university and wasn't good enough to play baseball at a big Division I college, but plays club baseball. I tell our parents also, that's one of the favorite texts that I get, because that tells me the kid had perspective enough that he wanted to go to Michigan State. I'm just going to name some of them where they're playing club. Michigan State, Harvard, Yale, Pittsburgh, all places where kids from Millburn have played club in the last 10 years. And it tells me that they're going to a big school. They recognize that they couldn't play there, but they still had the passion and love. So when you can get a kid as a high school coach to the finish line, and his goal wasn't to go play Division I baseball or Division III baseball, and they still love it. They had a good experience with you in high school, and then they prove that they love it by going on and playing with no fans and probably a keg in the back. I don't want to get anyone in trouble.
However it is, Coach, but
they love it.
Yeah,
and
I get it.
That means so much to me as a coach, that they were able to maintain that love through their experience at Millburn.
No, I get that, Coach. But all right, so moving forward, in today's world, you're seeing so many changes again on the high school level with sports and competition. Do you have any feeling about where we are as a state in the baseball world? We're a good baseball state, I understand.
A terrific one. You just saw Jack Leiter and Anthony Volpe, 2 kids from Del Barton, 2 kids that we've competed against at Millburn, tearing it up. Jack going 2nd or 3rd pick overall, right?
Second pick.
And
Jack.
Anthony's just doing really well. So many players. This kid Chase Petty down at Mainland this year, throwing 100 miles an hour and getting drafted. And again, there's so many talented players in New Jersey. I do worry, though, about the state of high school baseball. I care deeply about it, not just at Millburn, but the bigger picture. I'm a big high school sports fan and have been since I was a kid. I still remember the days of the Star Ledger and the In the Schools section that everybody remembers, and just pouring through articles and trying to find out as much as I could about it. But I do worry. I worry because of club and pay for play and nobody being where their feet are, and it's taking a hit, and it's up to us that are still involved in it to fight back a little bit. I saw Tim Corbin speak at the National Convention in January of 2020, just a few months before COVID changed the landscape on us. And he was talking about club baseball being a pageant, right, where you're only seeing the best of the kids. And he prefers to see a kid play in a high school setting where it's more of a premium on winning and execution and things that you don't see as much in club baseball. And you know, I don't know. I just worry. I worry that it's the importance of high school athletics seems to be diminishing a little bit.
Well, I've heard that across the board, Coach. Yeah. I asked you that question because many coaches have sat in that chair, and I think it's a concern for everybody in the industry per se. Mm-hmm. You know, Brian, you had mentioned that you coached girls at one point in your life, and you know the core of your coaching has been with the boys. Is there a difference? Is there a difference in the way you go about coaching girls versus boys?
Yeah, I would expand that to be, you know, there's a difference between coaching baseball at Millburn or at Nutley. You know, every situation is unique. And I think as a young coach, not just me, but any young coach, you go in and you have a way that you want to do things. And I wouldn't even say it's stubborn. It's just kind of a lack of understanding the big picture. And as I've gotten older, I realize things I would change and do differently. You know, there are definitely girls that you can coach the same way you would coach a boy. So I don't really view it as a boy-girl thing, but there are kids that are very serious in both boys and girls sports. This is where I'll put a bow on it for you. There's elite kids that have goals and aspirations to play and are motivated and want everything you have and want to be there 7 days a week and want to be coached 365 days a year in any program, boy or girl. Then there are middle kids who just kind of follow along, and you have to coach those kids differently, I think, even within your own team. You know, as a young coach, I had one gear. It was full speed ahead. We're going to practice every minute we can. The practices are going to be long. They're going to be intense. They're going to be informative. And I think as I've gotten older, I've realized, like, okay, well, that caters to me and to like 6 kids on a team I'm coaching. But what about the other kids on the team who are 3 sport athletes or just did it because their mom wanted them to put it on a college app or something like that? And I think it's important to coach those kids too, the way they want to be coached. So I have found as I've gotten older, I think a nice middle ground and a way to kind of keep all the different levels of involvement happy, you know.
Brian, you know, you talk about coaching, and as you said before when we had our discussion, it's a lot more than just the head coach. What do you look for out of your staff? You know, being close to the program, that I have been blessed with some of the most amazing assistants that a guy could ever have. And I know when I was in Cranford, Coach McCaffrey always made his assistants feel as if they were heard, that our ideas were implemented. He would give us responsibilities well beyond what a regular head coach had ever done. I coached third base, which the AD at Cranford at the time used to come to me and say, I can't believe he does this. His name's on the door, you're coaching third. I would never do it, he said. And he was a college baseball player. It wasn't like a non-baseball guy. So stealing an idea from Coach McCaffrey, as I've stolen hundreds over the years, when I got to Millburn, I right away named Chris Drexel our third base coach. I named Dave Drexel the pitching coach, and It was the principal at Madison
now the
High
principal
School,
at Madison
yeah.
High School. Yes, doing really well at Madison. And I told him, just go. And there were times where I would pull Chris aside and say, you know, I didn't love that. What about this thought? And same with Dave. Not as much, because Dave would snap back at me if I ever questioned his pitch calling. But and they both grew. They grew in the role, and we grew to be almost the same, right? There's no more doubts. I know that Chris is thinking on the exact same page as me all the time.
Well, you've been together for so long, you do think alike, and we should, for full disclosure, Chris is also a head coach. He's a head coach of the football program.
Correct.
Right? Brian, I'm going to ask you a few quick questions, some quick answers. I want to cover what we can here in these last 5 minutes, of course. The most rewarding part of coaching?
The most rewarding part of coaching is seeing the kids that you coach and you try to teach life lessons to come back as men, young men, and tell you that, maybe not even always just tell you, but show you some of them that they were listening to a lot of the lessons that you shared with them.
Teaching.
Same exact thing. Parenting, same exact thing. You know, I just took my oldest off to college 2 days ago, and I've had some conversations with him this week that I know he was listening to the things I was saying, just the simple baseline things that I talk about being kind. And, you know, his roommate is injured, and I told him, you know, you got to look out for Griff now. You know, he's going to be in a dark place. He's tough. He's out for the season. And he stopped me. He said, "Dad, you know I am. I'm definitely going to."
Now, this is at Johns Hopkins
Yes,
in the
sir.
football program.
Yes.
Brian, while we're on your family, your wife and another son.
Yes, my wife Rachel. We're married 20 years, and my son Matthew is going to be a junior at Cranford High School. Had the odd distinction of coaching against both Jake, who's at Hopkins now, and Matt this past year in our sectional championship
Yeah,
win
not easy emotionally.
over Cranford.
by any
No,
means.
there's video out there you can find of me cracking and choking up.
What's that like when your son's at bat and you want to get him out on one side, but
Yes.
if he is successful on the other, you're
So,
still happy?
I didn't experience that in this game because Matty is a pitcher only at that point as a sophomore, and Jake was not in the lineup. He had lost his spot in the lineup about halfway through the year. So Jake was running and Matt was in the bullpen, so I didn't have to face that. I faced it once in a scrimmage, and it was so unpleasant that I stopped scrimmage in Cranford. I just didn't like it. We had a really tough lefty who's now at Duke University, and I threw him knowing my son was going to be up. Lefty, my son's a lefty. And some of my close friends, including my assistants, were like, "Why would you throw your great lefty against your son when he's fighting for a job?" And it stuck with me. I hated it. So
Still remember your son at a 10-year-old game putting one out over there in Scotch Plains as
Yes.
we were getting ready to go on to the next field. Brian, what are you most proud of now that you look back at all these years that you've put in? You know, I know that it's a tough question. I'm sure there's many, many things you're proud of, but is there one thing that stands out, whether it's an accomplishment, it's an impact? What would it be?
yeah, I just think you touched on it when you said program versus team. I think that the fact that we've been able to kind of maintain this thing for 10 years now, pumping out not only teams that win baseball games, but good citizens around the school, kids that understand that that's a super important part of this is being a good person and being kind, kids that go on and are successful. And now I'm getting to that phase, right, in 10 years, so we have some late 20s kids that played for us. Coming back to be involved, whether it's coaching a fall game or when we played that Cranford sectional final, there were probably 1,000 people at the game. It was 12:30, like on a Thursday or Friday. I don't remember the specifics of the date, but there were 1,000 people there. And John, I stood by our dugout for a greeting line just of alumni players. It had to be 15 of them, one handshake at a time, and I thought, this is pretty cool.
That's
you know?
something to be very proud
So-
of, Coach Chapman. I will just say this, watching you these past 10 years, the way you lead, the way you handle yourself, seeing the respect you have from your peers, from your players, it is really special, and I certainly congratulate you on your successes, Brian Chapman. It's been a real pleasure having you here and wish you much luck moving forward.
Thanks very much. It's great to be here. You really enjoyed it. Thank you.
And thank you very much for joining this very special segment of Coach's Corner with Brian Chapman.